Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to
Good
Morning
morning.
Musings. We are Kathryn and Rachael, and together we're two life coaches who spend a lot of time helping people untangle the messes life tends to throw at us.
Every week we're grabbing a cup of coffee, though today it's water because I'm getting over my most recent hike, and talking about the patterns, habits, coping mechanisms, and downright weird things that we all do that keep us stuck sometimes. If you've ever found yourself thinking, why do I keep doing this? Why does this keep happening to me? You're in the right place because we've both been there.
We have both been there, and today's topic is I hate conflict. So, which as a recovering chronic people pleaser, I
Mhm.
absolutely hate conflict. So,
Yes.
I think though something that I learned as I really started stepping out of that people pleasing addiction,
Mhm.
was that I really don't hate conflict. I hate unhealthy conflict.
Mm. And
And
also,
that,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. And also, kind of what conflict has meant in our lives in the past. What happened to us during conflicts?
Yeah, yeah. So, and that's where a lot of us have largely been modeled unhealthy conflict for the most part, or been modeled, we just don't deal with that sort of thing, which, um, shocker, that doesn't actually fix it. It just makes the conflict worse whenever you
It
don't deal
does.
with it.
Because the resentment gets worse.
Yes, yes. So the conflict is natural.
Mhm.
It is not natural to go your entire life without conflict. Conflict is there to be information for us. We get tension points whenever we live with other human beings and even animals have
Yes.
tension points. They have disagreements. They have problems that they have to work out between themselves. And it's no different with people. And whenever we have that tension or that conflict, that's information that, okay, we need to sit down and talk this through and figure this out and untangle it.
Right.
So for a lot of us, that was either modeled in we don't talk about it and we just don't deal with that because we're afraid we'll poke the bee's nest and then that will unleash the unhealthy conflict where there's blaming and insults and threats and people jumping to conclusions and talking down to you and just all of that uncomfortable, unhealthy, icky stuff where it's like, you know
It's
what?
scary.
It's
It's scary.
scary.
I mean, the conflict can, some people are actually their survival. And if, as a child, if you think about this as a child, we aren't taught to have conflict because our parents don't want us to conflict with them. And so very often, especially if you were raised in my era, and I was the last part of the baby boomer, you were just taught to put up or shut up,
Yeah.
basically. It was,
Children are to
you're
be
gonna do,
seen and not
yeah,
heard.
yes.
And you
And
are a child.
we
What do you
weren't,
know?
yeah, we weren't taught how to say, well, I don't want to play basketball. It was just expected that we
Hmm.
were going to live these lives. So what conflict meant, it can also be triggering because it can be scary. It can mean that if there's conflict, it can signal the fear of loss. Like if I
Hmm.
conflict with this person, I could lose this person, even though it
Yeah.
might be just a conflict between, whether we, eat pizza tonight or, but those things can be big in our mind. So we
Yeah.
don't we have a tendency to avoid it, even when really deep down inside we wanted Italian food.
Right, right. And I know, like, for me as a kid, conflict meant that there would be a lot of shouting. There would be the person talking down to you, telling you, what do you really know? You're not perfect. How dare you
Hmm.
suggest that I be perfect? And so there'd be kind of that guilt tripping thing, and you can't talk to me about being better until you're better yourself. And so there would be that kind of guilt tripping. You have to measure
Gaslighting.
up the gaslighting. Yes.
Hmm.
It's so that measuring stick of, you have to do better than me before you can talk to me. And then
Right.
there would also just be, as a child, okay, now everybody's really unhappy, like, I don't want that. And then there would be a lot of the silent treatment. There would be well, I'm cutting them off. I grew up in a family that was cutting each other off before it was a TikTok trend. So they would literally sit around the campfire at family reunions and cut people out of the photo album and throw them in the fire. So
So
we were trendy.
that was a culture that really sent a message to you
Yeah,
that
that
if you didn't comply, that if you didn't fit in, that there was going to be a loss. And so
yeah,
it's not surprising that conflict would be something that would be terrifying for you. For me, I think it also is. But I think people see me and they see me in public, and of course they've seen me as a reporter and they've seen me do these jobs that are kind of high conflict jobs. And I think they think I'm okay with conflict. In reality, I just was really pretty good at the hustle. So
yeah.
I would hustle for my worth and hustle harder, rather than be open and honest about a conflict that needed to
Hmm.
be sat down over.
Yeah. I know that was a perception that I had changed of you whenever we really first started working closely together, whenever your dad was in his last year of life.
Hmm.
And, so that perception changed of, Rachel really is this person that can handle these sort of conflict issues, tension issues really good to, oh my gosh, she's just like me. She hates conflict. She's
Yes,
a
I
people
didn't.
pleaser too. And then it was like, oh, wait
Yes,
a minute. We can't both be people pleasers in this situation.
right. You did a pretty good job. I think we both did a pretty good job of balancing each other out. I think that conflict, I think if you think about it in its most pure form, it simply means that two realities have collided,
Yes.
and two perspectives have collided, two needs, two opinions, two separate expectations. Conflict in and of itself is not dangerous. It's our experience with conflict and what we think it means about us or could possibly mean about us that
Yes.
makes conflict scary.
Yes. And I remember that was something you and I both really had to work through while we were both working with your dad, who was a very high conflict person, we'll put it.
Yes.
And he definitely was his own man and he had his own opinions about how the world should run.
And they were that's only the only opinion that existed.
Exactly. And so, of course, whenever somebody reaches that point where their body is now also not agreeing with that, they tend to lash out at everybody. And so we had to learn how to take, that conflict as information and as a lesson. And it was not something that we were ever going to teach him how to have healthy conflict.
No.
He's never heard of her. So, and he's been around the block. So, but it's one of those things where we could learn ourselves how we understand he's not going to come into this conversation with any intention of it being healthy or productive, but we can come into it with our boundaries up and with the intention of we are going to be healthy and productive.
Right.
So that didn't make it any less frustrating. That didn't make it any less anxiety inducing. So, but I think it really stretched a muscle for us because we weren't able to run away from that conflict. We
No,
weren't
and
able to ignore it.
we were showing up for ourselves. So what sometimes conflict is difficult because we think we're going to lose. We know that if the conflict is going to happen, invariably because of our past of people pleasing, we were going to lose something.
Yes.
And so we were gonna, that if conflict arose, it was always going to be us losing this. The beliefs that kind of supported that idea, that belief, is that conflict means someone will leave, someone will stop loving me. I have to fix this. This is my fault.
Yeah.
So when people say that they don't, that they hate conflict, what they're really saying is that my nervous system has learned that conflict is dangerous.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why it's so important to kind of step into and start learning the steps because here's the facts. You don't get to go through life without conflict. It's going to happen. And I've seen a slew of people who, eh, across generations, it's not anything new, that their like drive and desire, their goal in life is to have zero conflict. Not going to happen. You are going to have conflict, and it's important for your health and for your relationships, for the healthy relationships in your life, to learn how to have that healthy conflict.
Mhm.
And then also just when you find safe people to have that conflict with, which Rachel was my first honestly safe person to have conflict with. And then my husband was definitely my close second on having safe conflict with. We don't always do it perfectly, but
Mhm.
having that safe person to practice with, even in a real situation in the moment, where we could work through it.
I
And
haven't always been a safe person to have conflict with. And so I love that when we actually came together, that I was really at a place where I had, as you so eloquently stated, flex that muscle. Because looking back, and I was thinking about it yesterday, I have a friend who's deceased now. She died sadly pretty young, but we conflicted. And I loved her again. I loved her dearly, but I was very. I had the long and the short story is I had volunteered for way too much in her wedding. I was singing a song. I was her bridesmaid. I was her matron of honor, and I was also handling all the music and everything. And I think
oh
I
no.
overdid it. And so by the time that, her party was going along and I was getting really tired and I decided I wanted to go home. And I don't know what I was thinking. I just wasn't thinking. I wasn't being very thoughtful. And so I had the music and I was supposed to return it the next morning. And so I went ahead and I took the music with me and I left early. I'm the matron of honor and I'm leaving her wedding party early. So all of these things are kind of no-nos, looking at it now. But she was pretty upset with me. And so when she decided she wanted to talk with me about this, I became immediately very defensive and then threw back at her that, I had done all this stuff and all the stuff that we do, in these conflicts. And so then my go-to was just to cut her off, just to say, well, look, if this wasn't good enough, let's just be done with this. And she said, Rachel Van Horn, I'm not letting you take your toys and go home just because we're having a conflict. We're going to sit down and talk about this. I love you, but we have to be able to talk. And I will always appreciate that her, but because I remember thinking, being a military brat, we moved every year, sometimes in 2 years. So I was never really trained how to have long-term friendships that
Yeah.
require conflict.
Yes.
And so she taught me. She was the first person who taught me.
That's
And we
amazing.
survived it.
Oh, you survived. Oh
We
my gosh.
survived it. And I got a chance to say that I'm so sorry. And that was thoughtless. And what the heck was I thinking? And why did I overcommit? And all of those things are so interlaced with each other.
Yes, yes. And I think, again, recovering people pleaser here. I think a lot of us tend to take on too much stuff because we don't want to have conflict. And then whenever it arises, we can throw that stuff back and say, well, I wasn't enough for you because I was doing all of this.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
you know,
And can't you see all the things I've done for you?
yes,
All the things I've done for you. That doesn't have anything to do with the fact that I took the music from her party and left early at something that I was actually responsible for.
right.
So it doesn't matter how much I've done. She wants to talk about what hurt her. So
Yes,
I needed to be strong enough to and flexible enough to hear that and to sit in it and say, you're right. I absolutely. I maybe give her the reason. I was overwhelmed. I think I took on too much, but it doesn't matter. It hurt you, and I would never want to hurt you.
right.
This is what conflict needs. It needs somebody to be able to hear it and not.
Yes,
The world is not going to cave in
right,
if I hear something bad about myself. And
right.
I think I'm shocked at how many people and myself um cannot hear have a difficulty, a low tolerance for distress over those kinds of things.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and I remember kind of the first time that you helped me reframe some of that thought was that whenever you were going to be bringing up an area of tension with me, you said, "Now I want you to understand this has nothing to do with your identity as a good person. You are still a good person. We're just going to improve that." And it completely reframed and helped me separate myself
Mhm.
from the situation and
Right.
remove my identity out of it. And I
Mhm.
realized that that was a big thing whenever somebody would bring up an area of tension with me, that I would have my identity wrapped up in it of they don't think I'm enough or they think I'm a bad person.
Yeah. And I
So,
think that's, again, we're talking about identity specifically related to conflict. And
mhm,
what that means, of course, and you're very, again, eloquently pointing it out that when we go into, if we are going to go into a conflict in a healthy way, we really do need to know who we are. And I think one more sentence, and that is that we are not human doings, we're human beings. So often we get our identity wrapped up in what we do. So if somebody criticizes something that we have done, then somehow it is going to the very core of who we are.
yeah.
I am not I am not a good person because I'm a journalist or because I wrote something great, and I'm not a good person because of that, and I'm not a bad person because I wrote something bad. Sometimes I wrote some stinkers like anybody, but I had my identity so wrapped up in the things that I do, the people pleasing, especially the people pleasing, that I couldn't I would go into a conflict, and those very friable things, the things that I was doing, if they were criticized in any way, I couldn't handle it because it felt like it was about my identity.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's super important whenever you want to have healthy conflict with people to remove that identity. And, kind of going back to the example of where we got to really stretch that muscle together was, with your dad, where we couldn't expect him to come into the
Mm.
conversation with any healthy intention, but we could work on that muscle by coming in by
Yes.
separating ourselves from the situation, from the conflict, from the tension,
And
separating
I
our
remember which
identity.
situation you're talking about when he had fired all of his people, and you
You're
had
all
to say,
fired. He
and you
said
knew
it so
exactly.
often. I made t-shirts for all of us that said you're fired, and we wore them to his wake. Oh
Yes.
my gosh.
But
But
you handled it so well because I was on my way home. I was already, very stressed. And you called me and said, hey, where are you? And I was just turning in, and you said, meet me up at your house. Let's chat about, and you broke it to me that my father had locked everyone out and fired everyone. And we sat down together and actually strategized a way to work together to make this work for us so that we could actually take better care of him and get a guardianship, because at that point of course he needed a guardianship, and I needed to be able to do that. And so you took a situation, we worked together, and you took a situation that, but and my initial reaction was exactly what you thought. I
Yeah,
panicked.
you
And I said,
panicked.
we have to go, we have to go get him. We have to go.
You were
And you
ready to
said,
put on your
hold on, hold on.
combat boots and go kick his door down and be
Yeah.
like, Dad, we're not doing this.
But that was a good example. It is. It's a very good. And we did get to stretch that ability to just use, as our friend DB Bedford says, that calm is our superpower.
Hmm.
That the ability to calm ourselves and to really stay in a good emotional intelligence place where we were calming ourselves and taking care of ourselves and then helping
Yes.
deal with this. That was a very stressful situation because we were, of how long it took for us to get that done, about 24 hours.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
And you
but
were like in a high stress job at the
oh,
time. So
y-
you had stress coming at you from
yes,
all different corners.
yes, it was, and we were in during a high stress event that we had never done before. It was the first year
Yes.
of an
It was
event.
the day
It
before
was
the
the day
event.
before, and he had planned it.
Yes, he had planned that specifically. So, but yeah,
Yes.
it was that's where we part of where we get that calm is to learn to kind of separate our identity from the conflict at
Mhm.
hand. And it makes
Yes.
it a lot easier to maintain an internal calm and an external calm whenever you can have that that boundary there of I'm going to ask questions, I'm going to listen, and I'm going to be respectful, I'm going to work with them the best I can, and I'm going to keep it on the issue, not the person.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use this to build the relationship and not barriers. And we're going to move forward. And it
Mhm.
makes it a lot easier if you can set the identity over here and say, okay, baby, this isn't about you.
Mhm.
It right there. And then this is about moving forward in a healthy way.
Yeah. This is kind of, here are the things I need. And I think, I think everybody can help themselves if they ask themselves a question regarding conflict. Um, what do you actually do when conflict shows up? Do you become the peacemaker? Do you shut down? Do you apologize immediately? Fawn. Do you over explain? I was a big over explainer. And then I'd get angry if somebody just didn't buy into my idea. Do you get defensive? So I was over explaining. And then if they couldn't understand, I would then get defensive. Then do you withdraw? Do you try to control everything?
Yeah.
Um, or do you pretend you're not upset? Do you play that game? I'm not upset at all. And again, all of that is, I think I've learned really well to say, hey, I understand where you're at with this, and I can understand how you got to this place, where you made this decision, but I'm not okay with it. How can we? This is what Virgil and I do. How can we move forward with this without, we're in the middle of remodeling the house. And so
That'll
this
test
we have
relationships.
many opportunities to really work in this way. So, showing up with some of those key skills is going to be important. And so, specifically, what do you feel like are some of the top three skills of being able to open up a conversation about something that you need to let somebody know, hey, look, when you come in late every day, it's I'm having a problem with it. Is there what skills do you think you should be able to show up to that conversation with?
Oh gosh. I definitely anytime I need to have a conversation like that with somebody, um I do what was modeled for me by you, and I will pull them aside and I'll be like, "Hey, I need to have a conversation with you. about, XYZ. I want you to know before we get into this that I'm not attacking you, that you are still a good person and you as a good person is not in question here. I'm just wanting to resolve this because this is a problem.
Yeah.
And and then a lot of times before I come into a conflict, or something that I know will be conflicting for somebody, a big tension area, I will ask myself some questions first, on, is this a person that I have to work with? Is this a person that I want to have a relationship with?
Yes. Yes.
And will bringing this up actually resolve the conflict?
Good
And
questions.
that has solved so many conflicts before I've ever had them. Because a lot of
Yes.
times I'll find out that, okay, I don't work with this person. I don't actually need or want a relationship with them.
Right. That
And
is
so
so
talking about
good
this,
points.
yeah, talking about this with them is not going to do any good. But then, like my husband checks off all of those boxes.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it's something that I come in, I make sure that I'm as regulated as possible and that I have removed my identity from it. Because
Mhm.
even me bringing it up, I can get my identity wrapped up in that.
Oh,
On,
yes.
I'm super hurt. You said X, Y, and Z, and that really hurt my feelings. That's very easy to get your identity wrapped up in, and be like, well, they don't love me, or they don't care enough, or
Mhm.
or they're
Yeah.
going to hate me for having this conversation. They're going to think I'm such a crybaby, whatever. You start telling a story to yourself in your
Right.
head.
Yes.
And so I really have to bring my nervous system down, like go soak my hands in some ice water and kind of just tell myself that, okay, I'm bringing this up because I love them and I love our relationship and I want to continue working with them.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
I'm going to move forward with this and then basically have an escape plan or a safe word on, if the conversation starts getting too heated
Sure. Yeah.
and you guys are in a place where it's not going to move forward because there is too much tension, having that phrase in your head where it's like, okay, I don't think this is going anywhere. So let's
Yeah.
take a break. Let's talk about
Yes.
something else. Let's go into different rooms. My
Yeah.
favorite thing to do with my husband is let's go on a walk.
Yeah.
There is something that literally just us both walking together in the same direction helps our brains and our nervous system move in the same direction. And and then also it helps us just get out of our head too.
Yes, it does. And just movement, it involves the body. And I don't know if you've ever read the book yet or had the chance to read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, or
Yes,
The
very
Body
good.
Keeps the Score. And when we involve our body in this whole process, movement is so important, and getting us to a place of emotional calm where we can have those conversations. Um, I think, the question is, um, when we're in peace, peacekeeping, in that kind of mode, often we'll tell ourselves, I'll sacrifice myself so that everyone else can feel comfortable. And of course, it always creates resentment. So I think, again, another skill might be asking myself, if I don't address this, am I going to become resentful? And what does that mean later? And of course, definitely peacemaking. When you're peacekeeping is one thing, peacemaking is a different thing. Peacemaking is something that it's like cooking, it requires the other person. And so I'll tell the truth respectfully, even if it's uncomfortable.
Yes.
So it's okay to be the peacemaker, or one, because peacemaking requires a combined effort. Peacekeeping is you're trying to control everybody else's, you're making yourself responsible for the emotions of other people. And
Yeah.
that doesn't work, as you know.
That does not work. No, it doesn't. And there are times where I really have to check myself on that and make sure that I'm not trying to control the room, the mood,
Mhm.
and everybody else's emotions. That's not my business, and I need to step out of it. And then there's times where I have to check my own resentment on,
Mhm.
okay, I decided this conflict was not worth bringing up, or I did bring it up and nothing happened. And instead of me sitting there getting bitter and resentful because people be doing what they do, I have to check myself and go, okay, so what do I need to do differently to go forward from here? Like, if I had this conversation and they didn't change anything, I need to adjust my expectations.
Yes.
And,
And
or
adjust, decide how much access. Again, if
yes,
it's a person who's outside of you, if it's a person you're living with, then definitely those conversations. Then we're talking about boundary setting and being able to say, I'm won't be able. So, like, if this is a situation where um, somebody is going out and they're staying out till 2 o'clock in the morning and they're married, that's
mhm,
a good example. It's that has to be addressed.
yes,
Now, if you're a person who absolutely that does not bother, there are people who that kind of thing does not bother. It truly does not bother them. And
yeah,
so that would be a personal decision.
right,
The big thing is don't gaslight yourself and say, oh, that
right,
doesn't really bother me, but deep down inside. And so I think to your point, asking yourself, is this real? Am I really not bothered by this? The
yeah,
other important thing about being open to conflict is that, look, the other person has a right to have their feelings.
hmm,
Oftentimes, especially people pleasers, will go into something with a low tolerance for someone else to have a feeling that conflicts with what we want them to feel.
yes,
This is
yeah,
why, by the way, we are people pleasing. We're trying to control the emotions and the feelings of other people. This is not help. First of all, it's not okay. It's actually kind of offensive.
yeah,
Um, I remember a conversation that I had with my daughter, and it was about our hike. And there was a moment in the hike when we just had a conflict in one of our hikes in Ray Lakes Loop in 2019. And I said something like I was suffering really bad, and I said something like I turned around and looked at her and I said, I'm not having fun. And it really hurt her. And it hurts me now to even think about me saying that because it was this great opportunity to be with my daughter. And all of a sudden I was resentful because my body was, dying. But but I made that statement, and 3 weeks later we were still processing that hike, and she let me know that that hurt her, and I became, again, it alarmed me. It made me feel like, again, this was a conflict, and I immediately went into that defensive mode, and but I made it, and we did the, all this stuff, and she said, Mom, I want to have a conversation with you about this moment, because it really hurt me. And I was able to calm myself down. We got off the phone, and I for 10 minutes I thought about it, and I thought, no, because she said these words, I need to be allowed to have my feelings. So I think that too, when we're having conflict, when we're dealing with, if we're going to bring up something, we need to also go into it allowing people to have and own their feelings. It's not that we're not responsible for their feelings, but we
yeah,
are responsible, if we love them, to being present for them, to allow them to have their feelings. It's one thing to have their feelings and for them to feel them and for them to express them. Maybe they even express that they're angry about that. At the end of the day, though, um, it is we're not responsible for their feelings, but we also have to be willing to let them have them.
yeah. We have to let them have their feelings, and then we need to take ownership of our feelings in the situation. And
Yes.
again, that's kind of that identity thing. So, bookending with that.
Yes,
And,
absolutely. I
if
think we're about out of time.
I think so. So I was gonna say, if this is something that you feel like you kind of need some help or you need some safe people to practice conflict resolution with, then coaches are great people to do that with. Like we have a lot of really good training for that. And we can really help you learn how to navigate healthy conflict. And so I'm Kathryn with okidokilife.wordpress.com. And
And I'm
then,
Rachel from mindhikecoach.com.
yep. So if you want to work with either one of us, definitely look us up on our website and we can talk. And in the meantime, keep binge watching our videos. You'll learn lots of great stuff, and we'll see you in the next video.
All right. Thank you. Bye.